going to click and send you on over to South America. So how fast is that from Europe to South America? Julian Wilches, are you available?
Yes, hi.
Hi, fantastic manufacturing and laboratory facility you have there in your background.
I was updating my name. Yeah, all right.
We've been doing some link sharing going on.
Oh, that's fabulous. So Julian Wilches is the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Regulatory Officer for a company called Clever Leaves in Colombia. And today he's going to discuss Colombia and South America, the market, and the future of the industry. Welcome to CANNA World Expo. Thank you for spending your time with us today. And please tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into the cannabis industry.
Well, thanks for the invitation. Basically, I've been working in drug policy my whole life, since 2003. I was an advisor for the presidential program regarding drugs, and then I was the drug policy director in the Colombian government. I left the government in 2014, and I was skydiving basically with a friend, and he asked me about the cannabis bill that was in the Congress. I explained the bill basically, and then he proposed to create Clever Leaves in 2016. Basically, we partnered three Colombian guys. We partnered and we created this company, and here we are basically.
Thank you for sharing your story, Julian. I love that adaptability that you displayed between shifting from government to entrepreneurship. You know, that's an incredible experience to have that I'm sure a lot of folks on this call have as well. So looking back, you know, would you have done anything differently?
No, basically no. I think the Clever Leaves story is a very nice story because we like to say that this is not about cannabis at the end. We're a cannabis company, but this is not about cannabis at the end. This is about people. The people that cultivate, that harvest, our neighbors, and the community that we have in our surroundings, the people that work and put its passion on this, and at the end, a patient is going to have a better life because what we do. So I will basically repeat the whole story, even with the mistakes, which are a lot, but I will do exactly the same.
I mean, the mistakes where we learn most, right? That then you're more prepared for a year like 2020 when we all get thrown a global pandemic and have to adapt and be nimble. I mean, would you say that you've learned some experiences there to adapt your leadership ability?
Yep, basically, the 2020 was the year that taught us how to plan for the unplanned, I will say. And adaptability, as you say, is of the essence. This industry is already changing every day, and with COVID, it was crazy basically. This is the year where we have exported the most. So basically, logistics and supply chain have been terrible. But now I will say that at this point, we've been able to export to more than 15 countries from Colombia.
Congratulations.
Even with the difficulties coming from flights cancellation and people, health agencies being concentrated and focused on solving the situation, or at least reducing the impact.
Yeah. So now that you brought that up, could you actually give us a bit of an overview of how Clever Leaves operates and where you are operating in, and sort of your priorities there as a business?
Sure. I will say that many industry or many companies in the cannabis industry born where legislations allowed to have medical cannabis. We definitely create a model which very high quality. As you know, we are EU GMP certified, also Colombian GMP certified. So high quality, efficiency in our costs, but guaranteeing high quality. So we were able to manage our operations to be in the places, not necessarily with the best and newest regulation, but the places that offered an advantage in terms of logistics, supply chain, quality, people being trained. So we basically operate in Colombia. We have 15 hectares that we can cultivate, or we cultivated 15 hectares under greenhouses of medical cannabis. Over there, we have the post-harvest, and we have our laboratory near Bogota. So we are basically integrated over here, and we export from here to Canada, Colombia, Brazil, Chile, Peru, Spain, Poland, Netherlands, South Africa, Israel, Australia. But remember that in Colombia we cannot export dry flower, I truly believe that that's something that in Colombia we have to change. It's unbelievable that we are basically denying the possibility for many people to access to the market of the dry flower, and because of that we have an operation in Portugal where we can export dry flower actually.
And is that exporting into Europe?
We're at this point we're having our first commercial harvest, so we're going to start exporting in the next months. Yeah.
And is that congratulations, by the way, on that? What an achievement! And so, is that going into Germany, or is it going into multiple European countries?
Yes, we're in that process of defining how are we going to deliver the product to different countries. But I will say that definitely Europe is our target market, but also Israel. I think it's a very interesting market for dry flower.
Yeah. So we've been discussing a little bit about EU GMP certification, and while it's definitely a challenge for companies to kind of jump through those hoops to meet it because it's such high quality, could you tell us about why Clever Leaves made that strategic decision to pursue that compared to going in a different direction?
I will say that we realized from the very beginning that this is as this is about people, and we need to give to the people and to the patients the best possible product. So we look for the highest standards, and definitely Europe has the highest standards with other countries. But I will say that having the EU GMP basically opens different markets in Europe and in different countries, even in Latam. I will say, for example, you know that Brazil, the agency in Brazil, Anvisa, does not accept the Colombian GMP. Even with even having borders between the two countries, they don't accept the Colombian GMP. So if you want to go to the Brazilian market, you have to have an EU GMP or a GMP from a country that is part of PICS or do have an MRA with Brazil. So for example.
So is Brazil setting their own standards, or are they purely looking to other countries at the moment for setting that standard?
They have their own standard in general for pharma, which is their own GMP, but they accept different GMPs from other countries, basically countries that are member of the PICS.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So is Brazil one of the countries that Clever Leaves has their eye on for the future?
Yes, I think it's the most interesting country in Latam. We'll see what happens in Mexico. But in Latam, I would say Mexico and Brazil are the biggest markets. We are already exporting, for example, to Peru, which we'll see what happens also. But definitely Australia, Israel, Europe, it's our main target with Brazil and Mexico.
Yeah, I'd love to. I do want to focus in on Colombia in a moment, but first I would just love to get your predictions on how, when Brazil comes online more, like what impact will that have throughout the LATAM market and even the global stage?
Mm-hmm. I mean, more competitors, highest quality, basically. So I think the patients are the winners at the end. 4 years ago, it was very important to have a license, for example, and be able to operate. 2 years ago or 1 year ago, it was very important to have a scale. So And so we got the licenses, we got scale. I think right now it's the most important thing is to be able to deliver your sales and generate revenue, create value. In 2 or 3 years, I will say that will not be enough. So that's why companies like us have to invest in R&D, basically quality, different products, standardization, what people deserve, basically what the patients deserve, a better portfolio with a standardized products.
Yeah, absolutely. Keeping in touch with what it is that the patients need. I wonder actually if you could spend a moment telling us how you yourself in your role for Clever Leaves, how you guys really stay in touch with what it is that the patients need.
In my role, what I have to do is basically guarantee sustainability. That and what from the operations perspective, I would say that being a favorable political environment, a regulatory environment, social environment, and opening doors, basically. So that from my role, I will say. And from product development, what we do is to follow up on new evidence, new documentation, papers, and yeah, we're evidence driven, basically, in product development.
You're evidence driven. So where is it that you're turning to get your research and your evidence? I would wonder if you're looking all over the world for that, not simply within your own country.
No, all over the world. I will say that the medical cannabis is one of the topics that people in general is researching more in the medical and scientific community. Well, probably now COVID is the is the new tender, but before COVID, we had a boom in research related to cannabis in different countries, and I will highlight, for example, Czech Republic, Israel, the US, in Europe also. So everybody is interested in this new topic because there's a lot of evidence. In some cases, hard evidence, more reliable. In some cases, just evidence that is in its first stage. So we're basically our team. We I mean, we're like 500 people around the world, and we have obviously a lot of scientists, PhDs, in chemists, pharmacists, engineers, doctors, physicians. So there's a team dedicated to that.
And I do love hearing the breadth of experience that exists, that people can now get into cannabis. I love that you can meet so many different people with so many different backgrounds in cannabis. That's just so fascinating to me personally, especially.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, it's like two different worlds in our case. So the agro-industrial part, I have my kid over here.
Hello. COVID times, I love it.
I have 2 kids and I'm home alone with them. So
no worries.
This is 2 worlds, like agro-industry. So you have to learn how to clone, cultivate, harvest, then how to extract it or to dry mill and in the post harvest, and then you have a lot of scientists in the laboratory, but you also have business developers, political scientists in my case, so a lot of lawyers, for example. So different disciplines coming into a new industry, which is promising, you know, because in diversity is where you can build.
Yeah, absolutely. And diversity lies our strength.
Yeah.
So I'd like to shift a little bit more into Colombia specifically. Could you give us just a brief overview, remind us what the regulatory framework is in Colombia, and then next I'd like to ask you about what you see is coming next for the country. So you wouldn't mind starting with just a brief overview of Colombia, just in case people on the call can't quite remember what's happening.
Sure. I think Colombia is obviously with differences, but it's basically answering the typical questions. Who is managing a controlled substance? Where do they have it? Which amount do they have? And what for? Traceability, basically. That's regulations all over the world. So in Colombia, we have licenses for cultivation, psychoactive and non-psychoactive cannabis being 1% the threshold, and licenses for seeds and licenses for manufacturing. That answers who and where. Yeah, and then the amount is solved by the estimates contemplated in the INCB in the single convention of 1961. So we have a year permit that we call quotas in Colombia. They are actually the estimates that we have in the convention. So that solves the question of the amount of cannabis that we're dealing with. And in order to get that quota, we have to have clients and we have to show traceability, and that solves basically, or that in that relies the possibility that companies have to having a quota, of having a quota. So basically, licenses, quotas, a lot of permits in the daily operation. You have to register your strains, and we can export everything but cannabis. That means derivatives, APIs, so raw materials and finished products or white label products. As I mentioned, I think Colombia has to give the next step, which is allowing the exportation of dry flower for medicinal purposes. I mean, either GMP certified or GACP certified, guaranteeing high quality. I think that's the next step. And what is going to happen for sure in the next months is that the most important decree of our regulation is changing. And I will say making more flexible the way you manage quotas, because right now it's very rigid and stringent, and it's okay to be stringent and to control, but you cannot control in a way that, one, you're not controlling, and two, you're creating a lot of bureaucracy. So I think that's going to change in the regulation. And if you want to extract hemp, and if you want to extract hemp, but basically you're going to need an additional license. That's something that's a new bureaucracy.
Sure. So with that, to your point that you brought up about control, I'm wondering, how much control is too much government control? Are they controlling out any opportunities for innovation? And does something need to change there in the future?
Yes. I will say that an additional lesson from COVID is that we need to cooperate, not only as an industry, but in the world in general. We need to cooperate between companies, between different stakeholders, and our regulation is very rigid. So, for example, it's very difficult to share knowledge or to share processes or manufacturing processes with other companies, because then you will have to include it in your license. You have to get a different quota, even for research. And definitely that has to change. So you know what's happening in the world in general, that cannabis is a controlled substance. So we have more than 120 controlled substances in the world, but people are controlling cannabis more than the other controlled substances, and that's a mistake, because basically we're creating obstacles and barriers for something that should be the contrary, the opposite. Opening windows and doors so we can generate additional research and R&D process, basically.
Right, we're missing opportunities to help people, right?
Of course. Colombia has the regulatory framework since 3 years and a half or something like that. And only a couple of months ago, Colombian patients were able to access to medical cannabis, I would say legally and legally produced in Colombia. And just a few companies have the permit to go to patients in Colombia. Being Clever Leaves, one of the companies that is able to go to patients, which is in any case, it is not our focus, our main focus.
That does make me wonder about with the patients and how that's of course controlled by the government through pharmaceutical medicines, but I know that in Colombia there's such a long tradition for the indigenous peoples and traditional medicine. Is there allowance made for home growing of plants in Colombia and respect towards that tradition by the indigenous peoples? Oh, yeah, we can pause and come back to that. Unless someone wants to join us on the call, that would be fine. Don't worry.
Sorry, Jill. As I mentioned, I have these two kids.
Of course, we are not going to keep you much longer, Julian. Don't worry. But
Sorry, Jill. Regarding we have different we have different different legislation for indigenous communities or different rules.
mm,
More related to traditional uses of some controlled substances. For example, they can produce in a different way. So it's more related to their traditions than to medical cannabis as we know it. Let's say as we know it as a typical medicine, I would say it's under the framework of
pharmaceuticals regulation, right?
Yeah, pharmaceutical.
Yeah. And so is anyone, whether they're indigenous or not, if they're interested in growing marijuana in their homes, is there allowance made for that at this time?
In Colombia in general, it is not criminalized to have certain amount of cannabis plants. Definitely what you cannot do is to provide the result of that cultivation to any patient. You can only give medicines to patients, and only physicians can prescribe medical cannabis. I remember, and related to my kids, once somebody asked me, will you give to your kids medical cannabis? And my answer was absolutely no. And this is not because of cannabis, but because I am not a physician. And the only person that can give a person medical cannabis is a doctor, at least in Colombia, and we truly believe that. So if the doctor says that I have to give Oxycontin or medical cannabis or whatever controlled substance in the form of medicines to my kid or to my grandma or to whomever, it's the decision of the doctor.
I mean, that does make sense, of course, because we do want to ensure that we're living up to the pharmaceutical regulations, and that everything that people are putting into their body is completely safe and on par with what their doctor says it will be beneficial to them. Thank you for raising that point. I know we're coming up on time, and of course you're getting a little pressed there. So I just want to check in a moment to see if we've got any questions coming in from the audience.
Hi there.
Yes.
We do have a question. If you can just hold on one second, Jessica. You may have covered this earlier, but if you could cover it again, what is the difference between medical cannabis and hemp and how it's viewed on a regulatory level in Colombia?
Great. Sure. It's basically the threshold in Colombia is 1% of THC, the same that Uruguay or Mexico or Switzerland. Yeah, 1% basically of THC, which is different from the US 0.3 or regularly in Europe 0.2. So if it's less than 1% of THC, it is considered a non-controlled. It is considered non-psychoactive cannabis, which is basically hemp.
Okay, Jill, I think you have a question as well.
Yeah, could you could you tell us a little bit more about hemp? I'm wondering about what the role for the future of industrial hemp could be in Colombia, if that's something that you could touch on.
Yes, and probably it's not me who has to ask who has to answer that question, because we're not dedicating any effort at this point to industrial hemp. So what we do with our high CBD strains is basically APIs and finished products that we're shipping to the countries that I just mentioned. So we're basically concentrated in APIs and finished products instead of industrial hemp, which I really don't know very well. So I think there's a big possibility in Colombia, because we have a lot of or a very good tradition with with large crops or cultivation like sugarcane, for example. So probably people being part of the sugarcane industry may switch to industrial hemp and explore that side of that segment of the industry which we are not concentrated in.
Mm-hmm. A topic for the rest of us to dive into in further detail in the future. Thank you, Julian.
No, thank you.
Okay, Julian, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and thank you for sharing what's going on in Colombia, South America. If you do have time, I wanted to let you know there's a presenter at 2 p.m. Pacific from Panama who has a software as a service innovative research platform that might interest you.
Great.
So, yeah.
Right. May I highlight something?
Absolutely.
It's very common in this industry to be to take part in a panel where you have like 5 or 6 men and then just only one woman. So it's very, for me it's very, you know what, in Clever Leaves 70% of our employees are women, and from them almost 50% single mothers, because we have this gender approach. So it's very nice to see the screen with more women than men in this cannabis industry, and
Thank
so
you.
that makes me happy.
Thank you so much. Wow. We hope to have you again on CANNA World Expo. We'll be broadcasting again starting in January, and in between we will be doing individual segments. So if something major happens, we'd love to have you as a guest in between the big symposiums. Thank you so much,
Great.
Julian.
Thank
We
you very
appreciate
much.
your time.
Thank you for the invitation. And apologize for my kids interrupting the
No apologies necessary. We do what we have to do these days, right?
That's right.
And family comes first, always.
Yeah, we adapt, as we were discussing.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking time away from them to join us. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much.